Okay,
Your
so
man's
that's
here.
the. Sorry?
Your man's here.
My man's here. Special guest. Here we go. Anthony Jupp. Good morning, Juppy. How are you?
Morning, Paul. Morning, Walt.
How are you?
I'm wonderful, but I've just got a question to kick everything off, though.
Yes.
Could New South Wales be as quick each Monday morning releasing the turnover figures as what they are the crowd figures?
Well, they've got to get their crayons out and colour them in first. So they've got to work out which way they want them to look, whether they want them to look good, bad, or indifferent. So probably, the crowd at least. That's a bit easy, like the football game, isn't it? They can always just make a number up and everyone turn over a bit different.
So punters, this week we've got Anthony on, and we've got some good questions to go through with him, and this will replace the normal Q&A that we do. Juppy, look, in relation to a recent segment we did on POC tax and the effect of the impact that's had on the business of Top Sport. Obviously, everyone's got a different business model, and it's going to affect everybody differently. You're a new operator, of course, with SwiftBet. You haven't just popped up as a result of the fee structure. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the story and the other reasons behind the move?
So my background, I've been in wagering for 20 odd years. I basically, for the last sort of 8 years or more, just worked on course. And of course, COVID, especially here in Victoria, knocked that right around. Like, we're still basically have COVID restricted betting rings here in Victoria. They're not at the full size they were before COVID. So basically we went for about 18 months where we could barely work on course. So that sort of hastened our entry into the online space. Basically, the amount of liquidity on courses dropped off too. It's still quite vibrant. There's still some money around, but it's not as big as what it was. So we sort of found the need that at that stage that we needed to migrate online as well, just to basically just so we could keep going at that stage.
Yeah, we chatted about it. I remember talking to you at Warrnambool about it, and I think you were sort of in the throes of getting yourselves online at or around about that time. In terms of the current structures, in terms of responsible gambling rules, all those sorts of things, what do you think the rate is as far as SwiftBet's concerned before a losing punter makes you money? I mean, I know Rob Waterhouse we had on recently talked about that, and I think he said it was 7% from memory for his business. But for yours, what rate do punters need to lose at before they become profitable?
It would be it would also be dependent on where they're based. Of course, with the ACT and Queensland being the dearest jurisdictions with the POC tax. But it'd be somewhere roughly around that. And it also depends on like what sort of punter they are as well. Like, it's also are they coming in on a Saturday where there's more bonus offers? Are they exclusively betting on bonus offers? All that sort of stuff has to be taken into account too, of what you actually need for them to become a profitable client. So, but it'd be roughly about that 7 to 9% mark. I'd imagine that's where you'd need to be, which I'm the first one to put my hands up and say that's not good for the industry.
No, we don't want that. We don't want punters losing that quickly. It just kills the game, doesn't it?
And the thing is that I think like 7 to 9 for Juppy, he's trying to be as competitive as he can, but someone like Sportsbet, who's carrying far more turnover, is also far more aggressive with their promotions, so their number's higher. So their number, if they're 7 to 9 and they're just trying to make a wage or make an earn and chip away, they're getting blown out of the water by these whales who are giving much more to these clients because they can, and they're stripping them at a bigger rate. They don't even know it, but they're getting a better product off little guys, but they just can't compete. So, 7 to 9, someone who's not offering huge incentives.
Well, I've copped it all in the last week as we saw the new entrant Betr came into the market last week, and like that's made my job substantially harder because you've then got to try and compete with the offers that that they're putting up, and then it becomes a bit of a race to the bottom. So you've just got to try and get a bit creative and a bit innovative in how you go about trying to separate yourself from the rest of the marketplace, because otherwise it's a race to the bottom for both the operators and the punters. Like, as we said, if with the current fee structure, it makes the recreationals lose faster. It squeezes out that middle tier of sort of your sort of solo pro punters and guys that are sort of marginal. And they're guys that often turn over quite a bit of money.
A lot more. Yeah.
And then that leaves you basically with your bigger syndicates, and they're probably not turning over as much because the edge is eroded. So yes. I feel we're at a tipping point. We're nearly to the stage where both the punters and the bookies, we all need to get on board and start lobbying some of these politicians or people in power to actually get across, because there was one question that I think you raised while in that previous episode, was either they don't understand or they don't care. Well, I think that's an answer we need to sort of get to the bottom of. Is it they don't understand what the knock-on effect of this is, or do they just not care and they just need the money?
I think they don't answer. So, say if you look at Betfair in isolation, Betfair really struggles because it's top-heavy now on sharps only and none of the recreational. And the other side of things isn't, say that's like at the moment 2% of the total, ecosystem, whatever you want to call it. The 98% is now dominated by recreational only, and no one else can get in there. And the competition used to be based on best price, best products. It's now based on best incentives, best promotions to retain. So it's not even like clients are getting a real run for their money out of it. They're actually getting squeezed harder than they ever have. They're just not aware of it. They're being handled by these promotions and give backs and whatever they are, and everyone else is being hung out to dry. And like I say, it's just there's a big tipping point coming, because the pool of people who turn over the most amount of money, stay in the game longer, is shrinking, and the big guys have got, as you say, no edge. They're gonna disappear, and how long can this money last? And I'm picking on Sportsbet again because, so for argument's sake, they turn over, 150 million on a Saturday. They're winning at, 15, 16% on turnover to make a profit. How long can that last? How the money just can't keep coming from these recreational guys.
So Anthony,
just going back to that, John, there was a key thing you said there with, this is where the on-course market probably hasn't changed that much. It is where if you want the prices, this is the place to go. Because often, like I go to meetings now where you can get the Betfair lay price without commission on some of these boards, because that's how far they have to reach to be able to try and put them in. So if you're a price sensitive punter, that would be my recommendation. Come out and see the bookies on track, because that'll still be there. There's the minimum bet laws, but you're not getting money back second and third, or it's even really hard now to get like the old best of the best products or the top fluck products. You might be able to get that off some of the on-course guys on a Saturday, but yeah, like those products are just really hard to deal with now.
Interesting point, because they say, okay, you should be able. You're an on-course bookie, right? And I treat you a bit same as Tristan, right? You guys are actually bookmakers that want to bookmake. You want people to bet with you and remain loyal to you because you're competitive from a pricing perspective, not because So you should be taxed accordingly. So all these guys on course, you, Dave Dwyer, doesn't matter who it is, must be taxed differently if you want to be more competitive in the marketplace, and that's probably something that has to be looked at, I believe, because if you want to say, I say, I'm going to keep my market cap I'm not going to go over 120 or something like that, that gives you a different bracket of taxing. There's a million ways to tackle it, but whatever's working on course now, they should be allowed to go online with those same prices, and then they're available to everyone. You know what I mean? Because at the moment, it's very difficult for, say, someone like me. Paul used to try and do it, but it's very expensive to try and go to Sydney just to be able to get a bet on, if that's where you bet.
Yeah.
So you guys should be able to we should be able to access you from everywhere, and your point of difference should be viable. If it's not viable online.
It's just the online business and the on-course, they're almost two completely separate businesses.
100%.
Like it really is a different world, because like the on-course stuff, for us, like we love it, and it's our sort of point of difference where we're out there. We try and get to as many meetings as we can so we can meet as many punters as we can. But it's very hard. Like the good meetings are still quite good. Some of the poor meetings, like I went to Caulfield last Wednesday for the 1,000 Guineas meeting because I had a runner, and seeing what some of the guys were holding there was just breathtaking how little it was. Yeah, and it was a wet day, but you think it's a spring carnival, it should be a reasonable day, and it just wasn't. And they had competitive prices up. So there should be room for all operators, whether it's exchange. Like I have a hell of a lot of respect for the Merle Hands and what they've built. And I love their model. I love betting on sport. I do more betting on sport than probably what I do on racing. And the industry here in Australia, especially for sport, needs them because they take a bet. And that should be part of the overall system. And we've got to find a sweet spot where everyone can coexist.
Fundamentally, for someone who's been around racing for 20 years and bookmaker like yourself, whatever, if a bookmaker says to you, I've got to cut my turnover by 60% to survive, you just fall on the ground. You'd be like, okay, mate, like what's the joke? That's the problem. There is no joke.
Yeah, and the thing about that is that's been put upon us by the regulators and the governments. We all understand that there needs to be a product fee. Like no one's questioning that. There's got to be a product fee. We've got to put some money back in so that we can keep the show rolling. We all understand that. But taxing people out of existence probably isn't the way forward because it's going to look very different in 2 years if everything stays the same. Because the amount of operators that I think we've got, I think there'll be less. It'll just be too hard for the little guys to compete. Unless you've got a giant marketing budget now, it makes it really, really hard, or you've got a real niche point of difference.
What percentage of punters do you think, Anthony, are actually price sensitive though?
From an outsider looking in, it would frighten you. Most of them, I would say probably 80% of them aren't. It's probably even higher. Aren't particularly price sensitive. They're just happy. They're betting. It's the recreation. Yeah.
And there's some chance of that men. So I was just going to say, there's some chance that mentality or that reality is actually driving some of the thinking behind some of the PRAs and what they think they need to do or not do with the marketplace, without actually considering that the ecosystem is built off, medium and larger players effectively supporting the whole system for the recreational.
Coexist.
Well, the other thing that the PRAs probably don't also understand is how onerous it is for the operators. So when we were getting started, I helped go through and get approved by all the regulators. And that's a very long process. And then we almost dread in some ways the first week of the month when it rolls around, because that's the week when you've got to do all your reporting for the PRAs. And like, we're not a big operator, and that takes 2 or 3 guys the whole week. So I'd be frightened to think how that goes with the rest of the industry. Like, that's just putting an enormous amount of pressure that those resources could be put somewhere else.
Yeah. So what are we going to do as an industry together to actually get a better outcome for not only racing and the operators, being yourselves and larger and smaller, but also how do we get that to flow through to punters?
I think there's a few things we need to do. I think we need to get together. Both sides of the fence need to get together. So guys like Richie Irvine, and I'm hopefully after the carnival, I'll go up and catch up with Richie, and whether it's Tristan or you got, both sides of the fence need to try and keep pushing to get in touch with the right people at the state government level and both at the PRA level, and explain to them that the model might look really good at the moment, but it's not going to last forever, especially in somewhere like South Australia, where they're taking a 15% POC, but only 10% of what they raise goes back into the industry. That's going to really, really harm their industry going forward. That's going to make it really hard. So I think we just we need to understand better what the pressures are on the government and why they've come to this decision, and then try and work through solutions with them. Because we're coming off the COVID sugar hit that we had. That's slowing down now, and it's in another 12 or 18 months, and especially in say another 2 years, if it keeps creeping along like this, it's going to slow right down, and that they actually need to be aware that there needs to be a bit of communication as to how we can find a balance where everyone sort of benefits out of it.
What's your view on the automation rule, Juppy, and what changes need to be made, in that context?
I think the automation rule for mine, the punters that we use the automation rule probably aren't going to do any real damage to your business, because you've only got to lay it once. It's all recorded at our end. It's all timestamped. If you're first, you'll get the price, and it will turn off after that. I think it's not a fair fight at the moment, where you see it now, especially if you're doing someone like who Walt works with, and my mate down in Victoria, Dan Kelly. If you're betting on the Victorian country stuff the day before, there is no market. If he sends out a tip, it's just collapses. Well, that's not good for anyone either. So we've got no real strength in the market. And at least that way, if you're getting that tip off the guys that are automated, that are happy to bet early, it's just, I think it'll even up the fight a little bit. And those sort of punters aren't going to do the greatest amount of damage. To give guys a bit of an idea and a bit of a look back, if behind the scenes, compared to say guys that are just the professional promo guys, they'd be at least 10x whatever what you call the hot punters would be. Yeah. That's how much more damage they can do.
And honestly,
if they go unchecked, they're going to do a hell of a lot more.
It's actually more attractive for people like myself or someone who sits in the middle ground, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't matter, to become a promo hunter and combine them than Correct. It does to be a real punter now.
Yep. Oh, I've got no doubt about that. That if you were a good promo arbor, you'd make more money out of that than you would out of actually sitting there doing the form, watching trials, all that sort of stuff, the old school pro punter. Yeah, for sure.
And if you combine them,
a far bigger edge doing that.
Yeah, and if you combine them in some sort of team, it's far easier to do that, I think, than be a flat out punting team now, which is just madness.
Yeah, it's not fair.
That just shows that. Yeah, that just shows where the industry's shifted to.
In my view, it's not fair that the bookmakers can use automation and we can't. And as you say, it's got to be a fair fight.
Yeah, and also there's been times where I feel bookies have hid behind that rule to exclude punters too.
Yeah. Well, there's a number of them out there, and they're pretty well known in terms of who they are. The guarantees that bookies need to provide, Juppy, when they take out a license, obviously it varies depending on where they're licensed, I'm assuming. In your case, how has it been structured?
So in Victoria, to get an online bookmaker's license, I believe it's 250,000 in cash, and you have to have $1 million in assets. So that was sort of following on from your question, Paul, where you questioned the liquidity of some of these. That's when pretty much all the states around Australia now, you'd have to put up a guarantee. I think New South Wales might even be more. And then I'm not quite sure on the NT, but yeah, you do have to put up quite a substantial sum of money to keep working. We had you would have seen on some of our social feeds, we had a couple of punters there. It was the Wyong Cup weekend where we got hit with a couple of big multis that finished up on the golf, and there was another one on horse racing. So yeah, sometimes you can get them all at once, which isn't really ideal, but we caught them and we were happy to pay them. And and we move on. So yeah, that's just part of the business model now. That's one thing that this is part of what sort of happened over the last 10 years. Like when I was growing up, you went to the track or you read as much as you could and you try and learn off the smarter punters, and you sort of learnt by watching and doing. Well, probably in the last 10 years, a lot of that has got fallen on at the hands of Sportsbet, where basically they've educated this next generation of punters. They're the ones that have taught them about same race multis and to expect money back second and third, and same game multis and multis just in general. Like when I first started, which was 25 years ago, probably, like the only multiples you could have was there was probably 3 or 4 doubles bookies at the track on a Saturday that you could go and take a double with, and that was about as it was that, or the 4 placed horses. They were about the only ones that you could take at that stage.
Mail. Remember, Cole used to send them out in the mail.
Yeah.
The doubles. It was doesn't feel that long ago either.
No, and now it's like, like it doesn't feel like that long ago, but when you actually think about it, it is. But
it is. But then you see
the game's completely changed.
You could double anything, and now it's back to there.
Yeah, it's like the amount of we see that now. Like there's anything from 3 to 20 leg multis just rolling through all the time, because that's just what the punters want, and that's sort of how they've been taught how to do it.
So, Anthony, for all this to work and be sustainable, we need to probably collaborate. There's got to be an open forum, doesn't there, between state governments, PRAs, and punters representatives, and we need to understand their position so that we can understand what's driving their decision making, and they need to understand what's actually happening in the marketplace now, and that what's happening in the marketplace now isn't reflective of what's taken place, as you say, during this sugar hit through COVID, and what's going on now, and how's it all going to wash out in the end. There's got to be some collaboration or open collaboration or willingness to do that, don't you think?
From my time in the industry, Paul, I haven't met an unintelligent winning punter yet. The amount of guys that have made an earn out of this game are some of the most intellectual people you find. Why they couldn't why the PRAs and the governments wouldn't want to tap into these sort of people, I'm sure if we understood what their problems and their issues were, then we could help with a solution for it. But my other goal is to try and channel bookie whinging into renewable energy and solve the energy crisis, because it seems that every bookie just whinges on how bad it is and all this sort of stuff. Well, we actually need to get solutions based. Go to these guys and say, like, let's all work together to find a solution that helps you, but it also makes it viable for us, because we're not just the golden goose that's just going to be there to print money from now into infinity, because they're eventually, like we've seen it slowing down now, the interest rates have gone up, the inflation's gone up. That's putting pressure on the household income, and that means that there's not that discretionary spend for the punters there to just keep betting with.
That's right. I mean, the average mortgage payment has risen significantly. I think it's around about $16,000 a year, based on just an average mortgage size. That's considerable, and a lot of that hasn't flowed through yet, and a lot of it hasn't hit. So by Christmas time, all the effect of those interest rates, or the cumulative effect of those interest rate rises, will have hit. Households are going to be doing it tough. There's Christmas presents to buy for the kids, less money to gamble. The tipping point's close, isn't it? We've got to solve this soon.
It's not just gambling too. It's also ownership. Everything right through the industry is going to get hit.
Well, I'm here in the epicenter at the moment. So I live here in Bendigo. I've actually got a family from Rochester who's displaced by the floods staying in my spare room. And I went to Horsham yesterday to their cup meeting, and that drive normally takes me about 2.25 hours. It took me 3 because of the roads that are washed away and still flooded and whatnot. I've got a very good mate who is the head engineer at Loddon, and the figure that he gave me that he's going to need to repair the roads, well, that means that everyone's rates are going to have to go up by whatever the maximum they can charge them to try and get the money in, as well as the money from the federal and state government to help repair the damage that's been done here through Victoria through these these floods that we've had. So there's pressure just coming from everywhere. But rather than just jack up the taxes on everything, it's just going to cause havoc through the industry if they keep doing that.
Indeed. Anthony, thanks very much for your time today, and really good to have you on the show, and of course covering off on those very important issues that affect us all. Is there anything else that you'd like to leave our listeners with before you go?
Going back 10 seconds, so I don't want to cut you off, but I think, it's really important. You say we have to combine. I agree 1,000,000%. And it has to be not sports bet Ladbrokes, the guys who have just got full control. It really does need to be on-course bookmakers that, one day they're going to have to transition to where you are. You guys, anyone who's looking to grow turnover and actually provide a product that's not based on promotion, that's actually based on racing and wanting to grow their turnover side of their business, they're the people that have to combine with us, because they understand that, while we're enemies, we still both need to coexist. And the only way we're going to grow you're going to grow is if we're a part of it. So I think, if we can combine, that's our best chance.
Yeah. I think Tristan's flown the flag for that. He's tried to do his bit where he can. And often if you try and see the minister, I've found just by traveling around, and anyone who's followed me on social has seen that I've been here, there, and everywhere in the last few months. Often the hardest part is just trying to find the people that make the decisions and talking to the right people, whether it be at club level, PRA level, or government level. If you can find those right people to talk to, get a clear message across to them, and then also get feedback from them about the challenges they're facing, I think that's how we try and move forward. But there should be no industry where they're trying to stifle competition and stifle local guys from getting in. And also the other thing is, I've never been to the races in New Zealand. I've been to plenty of harness and greyhound meetings where there hasn't been an on-course bookie, and they're a fairly lonely place. So I'd hate to see that disappear from the landscape. I think hopefully.
Anyway, thank you very much, Juppy.
Thank you very much, Anthony.
No worries, guys. Always happy to chat. I'll do my best.
Cheers, mate.
Okay, guys. Thanks for that tuning in today. Of course, we'll be back on the end of the week. Of course,
you'll be back in about 20 minutes. What are you talking about?
I'll be back in about 20 minutes. Of course, with Peter Lawrence reviewing the Caulfield Cup meeting on Saturday, and we'll be back later in the week with rapid fire. I'm not sure what it is yet, but we'll know that. We'll work it out. We'll work it out. Thanks, guys. Thanks for watching.
I'll even press the button here. Hang on. What do we got? Outro. Bye.